We've come a long way from understanding the basic principles of this very important phenomenon. Although there are still a lot of doubts whether it exists in clinical setting, we are getting closer to understanding the mechanisms that are driving this very important neurotoxic phenomenon. And at the same time, we are getting closer to realizing that actually it is important to be studied, and it's relevant in particular in children who require multiple anesthetics and are exposed to anesthesia for a long time. We have a long ways to go as far as deciding which way we should go to develop new anesthetics that are perhaps safer to be used in young kids. Also, whether there are some safening strategies that we can apply so that the existing anesthetics could be safely used.
Certainly on the animal side of the work, we've made great advances in terms of understanding some of the mechanisms that are responsible for some of the changes that we see. On the human side, we've had really 3 studies over the last 3 or 4 years that have really given, I think, been a major contribution to our understanding of the field, and that have all been remarkably consistent. So that when we look at the results, the short answer is that fortunately, it does not appear that anesthesia exposure is associated with major deficits in important domains such as general intelligence. On the other hand, there has been an emerging picture of some changes that are associated with anesthesia exposure. There has been a very consistent picture now of anesthesia exposure and even exposure to a single anesthetic being associated with changes in behavior, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and associated with some pretty subtle but significant defects in some neuropsychiatric measures, especially in processing speed and in fine motor coordination. These changes are consistent with emerging evidence that we're seeing in non-human primate models, where we see many of the same patterns of effects.
There's a couple of sort of hot topical questions at the moment. One is the signal from some studies which suggest that exposure to anesthesia may be associated with behavioural problems. The data are still very sort of weak and tentative, but it is a tremendously emotionally charged suggestion that anesthesia may lead to learning problems or something like ADHD or something like that. I think some really big clinical definitive studies to unpick that issue is going to be important, but it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be easy because for some of these diseases or conditions, we don't really understand the neurology or the neurobiology or the psychology. So if you're trying to see if exposure to a particular drug causes X, but you really don't understand the pathophysiology of X, then that's a tremendously difficult ask.
The challenge here is to separate anesthetic exposure from the effect of surgery and to account for all the confounding factors, what we call confounding by indication. Children who have surgery are not the same as children who don't. There's no getting around that. So how can we find a way to look at this problem that eliminates those issues? Well, the classic way to do that is a randomized controlled trial. The GAS study was a randomized controlled trial. But we knew before the GAS studies results were published what they would be. Because in the interim between the design of the GAS study and the PANDA study, there were many studies that showed that if we were going to see an impact here, it was going to be on kids who had been exposed more than once. And neither of those studies were designed at a time when we knew that. The other study design that we will never do is the prospective cohort study, which would take many years to assemble a population and study it prospectively over many years' time. Very expensive, very difficult to design, and often the science overtakes the study. So the study design becomes out of date before the results are available. So Ultimately, then we're left with what we believe is the most productive approach, and that's the search for biomarkers. And biomarkers can take different forms. They may be a substance in blood that identifies injury to the brain, but more often they're sophisticated imaging studies, and some of those studies have been done.
There are a number of challenges, including ethical limitations, that make it difficult to perform clinical studies of anesthetic neurotoxicity in children. For example, we can't just give large doses of anesthetic to healthy children who don't need surgery, and we can't randomize them to receive these medications. But this isn't an issue that's exclusive to this field. Other exposures, such as pesticides and lead, are also chemicals that you can't give to children. Those substances have been evaluated and have been deemed to be either harmful or not. Like other fields, we can also use innovative research methods and study designs, as well as collaborations with preclinical researchers to ultimately answer the question about the safety of anesthetics in children.
Biomarkers are the way forward that we're really going to be able to best address this. Biomarkers meaning something that we can actually measure in the children that could be associated with the anesthetic state itself.
I think the challenges are very related to funding. If there was more money available, I think the international group of pediatric anesthesiologists that are interested in this could easily do more studies. But they're very expensive to do prospective trials. I think that we would need to get a group of people together and finish the T-Rex trial, which is underway, will be finished, and then work hard to try to design prospective studies for patients that need prolonged sedation in the intensive care unit. I think that would be a great area of study. It would take a lot of pre-work to try to tease out what are the potential confounders and how they could be mitigated. So I think the study itself would take some time, but almost the preparation work to design the study would take a long time as well. The longer you wait before you do trials like this, the harder it is to do, because the standard of care changes and evolves even though the scientific evidence isn't necessarily complete. So it would be important to do these trials as soon as possible.
In terms of funding for anesthetic neurotoxicity research, more funding would definitely promote more studies in these areas and help us to answer these very important questions sooner. I think progress in the field has been considerable, but funding for all research these days is sometimes difficult. If we did have more funding, we could initiate more studies, such as the randomized controlled trials, biomarker studies, or other types of studies that would help us answer these questions.
Since I started practice about 15 years ago, I must say that the way we practice pediatric anesthesia have evolved, because we as clinicians definitely think more about use of benzodiazepines, ketamine, and opiates in critically ill neonates and infants. So I think the focus has been more, is there a way to give regional anesthesia? Is there a way to avoid potentially GABAergic effects of drugs on the developing brain? With respect to what's going to happen in 15 years from now, I believe that the strides will be made and the progress will be made, and the current practice is going to evolve. How exactly, I'm not sure.